Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism and narcissistic relationships and healing from these relationships. So, I'm on a bit of a David Kessler tear lately. David's an amazing grief expert and a friend. And I went to one of his lectures recently, and grief is so central to the process of working through healing from narcissistic relationships. So I'm always trying to learn more about it. He said something, though, that's stuck in my mind that I think is really worth us sort of analyzing on this channel, which is the mind would rather feel guilty than helpless. Now, this is the core of what so many survivors go through. Remember, David Kessler's work is very focused on the grief following death. But I actually think that this line may apply even more so to people in narcissistic relationships. I'm always struck by how much guilt plays a role and a barrier in the healing process of survivors of narcissistic relationships. When I work with clients, I ask them, and they tell me they feel guilty. I ask them, tell me what it is you think you did wrong. Because really the sense of guilt is predicated on the perception that we did something wrong. We do something wrong, we feel guilty. So here's a list of things that people have typically said to me when I ask them what they thought they did wrong in the narcissistic relationship. They said, maybe I should have been more forgiving. Other people told me I should be more forgiving. Maybe I was asking too much and being too demanding. Maybe I wasn't good at communicating myself clearly. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm the issue because I actually am the one who didn't leave. I did end up going back. I feel bad for leaving. I feel bad for staying. Maybe I didn't try hard enough. Hey, you can go into the comments and share what you felt guilty about in your narcissistic relationship. And then let's step back and widen that lens. You feel bad, you feel guilty, and yet you were the one who's being manipulated, gaslighted, shamed, blamed, betrayed, emotionally abandoned, emotionally controlled. So you're being abused and you feel bad and guilty. That is the definition of a mind F, right? And the feeling bad, that's the guilt part. And obviously it's one of the cores of the self-blame people experience in these relationships. As long as you feel guilty, the relationship can persist because then you're the problem and then you can fix it. The day that that guilt lifts, well, that's a tricky day because then you also need to see the relationship clearly. That this person is treating you badly, that it's not okay, and that it's been happening for a long time. And whether you stay or go in the relationship, that has to be acknowledged. And then that old cognitive dissonance comes in and it's really uncomfortable. Strangely, guilt may be more comfortable than feeling that dissonance. And that takes us to what David said, that guilt may be more comfortable than helplessness. And that word, helplessness, is at the core of our experience of the narcissistic relationship. Nothing you do works. Whether you talk more, talk less, act for nothing, be small, don't exist only when they want, be what they want, try to read their mind, be everything, be nothing, do everything, make their life easy, succeed, but don't succeed too much so they don't feel threatened. No matter what, no matter if you do none of those things, all of those things, it's still never enough because it's not possible, nor is it good for you. No person should be stuck in a position of having to try to please another person and believe that that is love. It's not. That is subjugation. Giving up on yourself so someone else can feel better about themselves, that, again, is subjugation. But feeling helpless is awful. It's one of the last stops on the train before depression. It's also a major part of grief. When we think about the grief around someone's death, we may get lost in thoughts about, if only I had driven them myself, if only they didn't skip that doctor's appointment, if only I had spent more time with them, if only. And when someone has passed, David would call all of that if onlying part of the bargaining phase. We can't bring them back. In a narcissistic relationship, all that if only is, if only I didn't say that, if only I had had a different parent, if only I hadn't fallen for the love bombing, if only I had paid attention to my gut, if only I had not picked up their phone that day. Our if onlys are not just about things we wish we hadn't done or said, but they are also about how life could have been different if we didn't have to deal or develop around a relationship like this. And all of that leaves us feeling helpless. Ultimately, we often feel helpless because we can't change our narcissistic relationships. And in many cases, these people with these personalities are people we did or do feel love for, parental love, romantic love, friendship love, or even a sense of loyalty. And we want it to work. And we tried everything. And ultimately, we cannot change them. And that is such a heavy feeling of helplessness, and then more grief. The idea that there is something we can do can feel very affirming. And this is where narcissistic relationships really have us in a catch-22. We feel guilty, despite us being the ones who are abused and harmed, and we feel helpless because there really is nothing we can do to change them. Neither feeling is good, but the guilty part, that's a distortion. The helplessness is more real. Staying in a relationship because you have hope is not a bad thing. Leaving a relationship that isn't working is not a bad thing. Not being able to read someone else's mind is not a bad thing. But coding it as you are the one doing something wrong, that's the part that keeps you stuck, and over time, it makes you sick. The helplessness is honest. You can't change them. And interestingly, the guilt part may delay the grief, which kind of feels good because it's a painful feeling, because you're still doing and doing and doing. But the helplessness, that propels you into grief. Grief is human and normal and a necessary part of letting go and moving forward into your life. It's a universal part of being a human being, and it's not just reserved for death. It's for loss. And even if you stay in the relationship, in a narcissistic relationship, there has been a loss of what you thought the future would be, of your love story, of your narrative, of your hope for what they could be. That's a lot to lose. And so you grieve it. Helplessness is also about humility and recognition of the limits of a situation. And narcissistic relationships are all about limitations and what can be done. Stay or go, there's grief. And so allow it to flow. There is another side, and it won't always feel hard. But remaining in the guilt can keep you from your true, authentic self for years. And the world needs you. Can't have you hiding away from us. There is no worse crossroads than the intersection of grief and helplessness. But maybe the middle road is realistically seeing these relationships for what they are. Instead of helplessness, you get to clarity. Thanks again.